Good evening and welcome to World Talks with me, Salia Strzemska. The 75th NATO summit has come to an end. To discuss the key developments for the region and shed more light on Poland's domestic issues, I am joined by Krzysztof Bielecki, former Prime Minister of Poland, who later also served as a president of the Economic Council under Prime Minister Donald Tusk. Good evening, delighted to have you with us.
Very good evening to you.
So let me start by asking you about these security guarantees for Ukraine. Some say they're very significant. I mean, the F-16s, $43 billion in assistance, Patriots. Others, however, say that it is too little, too late. What is your take on the issue?
There's never-ending explanation by some of the observers and politicians that it's not enough. However, one has to observe that we are moving in the good direction. Since the beginning of the war, we remember how impossible actually was to introduce German tanks to the battlefield in Ukraine, because that would be recognized as a direct engagement of NATO forces. Then there was a discussion about some missiles, and then there was discussion about the range of the missiles. Then there was a discussion about different air defense solutions. Now we have, but maybe it's finished, discussion about the jet fighters necessary to defend the airspace of Ukraine. So every month, NATO is moving in the right direction, I would say. And the bridge, as they like to call it, between Ukraine and NATO is shorter and shorter and shorter. For those who would expect that it's done, that during the war, Ukraine could become the full-time member of the NATO, that probably is not enough. But for the observer, I think it's obvious to say that this is an irreversible process, that the path is observed and is advanced, and engagement also for the next year, I think, looks very promising for Ukraine. So, yes, I think it's a move in the right direction.
So we've been discussing Ukraine, but what about European countries? Because European members of NATO are saying that they need to do more to defend themselves. Poland has also joined this coalition to build a long-range missile that goes beyond 500 kilometers. So was the summit a success for Poland, or was Poland expecting more?
For Poland was not only successful, but also very meaningful, because NATO could celebrate 75th anniversary. For us, NATO was like a never-ending and happening story, and only a dream. But up to date, we can say that we have already 25th anniversary of our membership in NATO. And for us, that actually anniversary is much more important than 75th of the organization, because at that time it divided Europe. Now we are in, and the Europe is much more extended to the east. So it's important date. On top of it, as you recalled, the defensive cooperation between four countries is established. Hopefully the production of new kind of longer range missiles will be introduced. Industrial cooperation regarding the defense sector is extremely difficult, I think, and extremely important at the same time. Difficult because we have so many nations, so many interests, so many different plans. But for that, if you want to be successful, and a lot must be done, you need better cooperation, much higher level of production. Still, I think Russia is manufacturing more rockets, and not maybe rockets, but shells and basic ammunition than NATO or the Europeans. So any cooperation, industrial cooperation, is a very important step forward.
That's right. We absolutely need to be prepared. But speaking about the CEE, there's this one country that is a little different, and I'm talking about Hungary. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has recently embarked on this trip around the world, visiting Kyiv, then Moscow, and finally Beijing. He says it is a peace mission. What is he trying to accomplish?
Well, first of all, we have to recognize the role played by Viktor Orban on that mission. This is true that there is a principle of rotating presidency of all 27 member countries, so each of them has 6 months of so-called presidency, but the understanding of the presidency is more like a chairmanship than of somebody who is setting up agenda. So if Viktor Orban goes to Moscow, despite, let's say, moral and ethical constraints, I think he doesn't have any mandate to speak on behalf of the European Union. And this is very important. So it's like a private trip of the Prime Minister of one of the 27 member countries of the European Union. But he is not a chairman or president of the EU who could speak and whose mandate is agreed in advance by the European Union institutions like the Commission and also the so-called president of the EU. So he travels in order to make more maybe attractive business offers for Hungary. They used to go to Germany to be a very important supplier of German industry in the past. Now they want to be a big partner for China. They already invited the Chinese investor to the automotive sector. So instead of BMW, they would have now BYD. Instead of European solution for the nuclear power plant, they would have a Soviet or Russian solution. And this is a simply wrong choice by Viktor Orban.
Right, perhaps he's catering to the domestic audience. And speaking about domestic issues, we have a breaking story today that the bill aimed to decriminalize assisted abortion did not pass the parliamentary vote despite being championed by the ruling coalition. So what does it say about the coalition? Is there a rift, and what can we expect?
Oh, well, it's a blunder for the coalition, because I understand that they had some quite long-lasting internal discussions on the scope of the new law, and it looked like being agreed, and so many compromises has been agreed in order to make it possible, and they have a clear majority to pass it in the House. And to my surprise, part of the coalition, one of the parties, in fact, voted against. Not maybe everybody, but most of them, including the leadership. And also some of the deputies were missing. So as the outcome, the law is not enacted by the House, and it's against the promises delivered by the particularly civic platform, it's against the expectations, and that's why a few deputies representing the coalition already have been penalized by the chairman, by Mr. Tusk, and suspended as the members of the parliamentary caucus. And we are looking forward to what will happen next.
And what could be some of the long-term consequences? Do you see the coalition breaking up?
Well, I hope that the coalition understands clearly that in order to introduce so many changes to Polish public life, social life, economic life, they need a very effective majority. Simple like that. In the parliament, you need a majority. And today, that majority was actually, for the first time since the election, has been challenged and questioned. So definitely is not a good news for the chairman.
Right, and could it have further implications further down the line, perhaps during the next parliamentary election or during the presidential election? What is your take on that?
Well, that subject definitely will come back during the presidential election and could draw a new dividing line between so-called conservative candidate, whoever it might be, and the centrist candidate who will, I guess, stand for much less restrictive legislation in Poland, because Polish legislation is highly restrictive, which caused thousands of Polish women traveling abroad, which is not good, and it's a very good example of hypocrisy which nobody could share.
They are definitely disappointed. Of course, it is quite difficult for governments when Prime Minister hails from a different political party than the president. But speaking about elections that are in the future, let me turn to the US and the 2024 presidential election there. There has been much talk about whether Joe Biden is a viable candidate, whether he's fit to run. How do you see this? Because it also has been discussed on the sidelines of the NATO summit.
Well, because this is a very important issue and a little bit dramatic situation in the United States, that the challenge is between quite, let's say, mature individuals in the days when dynamic decision process and quick response is really required. And in the US system, where the role of the president is really as the first executive, to have a fit and also very not only fit but also ready to work long hours is a precondition for effective ruling, not only of the country but also to some extent significant part of the world or democratic world. So
do you think
for me, the last days are getting us closer to the recognition that the discussion about fitness of President Biden will absolutely cover up any other issues on the agenda. So it plays very much to the Donald Trump camp and release him completely from any other, let's say, accusations or allegations. And I think Democrats will be forced to look for the next candidate.
Perhaps we'll see a new candidate after the Democratic Convention. Do you have any guesses as to who could that be?
Well, it's difficult to say, but we Poles sometimes we like to think too much and to speak too much. So maybe on that basis, I will say that if the change is introduced, I'm pretty convinced that the next candidate will have a very good chance to win. And if it's a woman, that would be very interesting transition also in the United States.
Very interesting indeed. I guess we'll have to wait a little longer, but we'll find out soon. Thank you, sir, for being with us this evening. Jan Krzysztof Bielecki, former Prime Minister of Poland, was my guest. And thank you for watching World Talks.
Thank you.